YouTube, what's a word? What's a vibe? Y'all see what we got? We got another one. We got that simple history. Why you never volunteer in war first. Now we ain't even gonna say too much. We just gonna get straight into it.
You never. Why
How
you
everybody
never
doing? Y'all
volunteer
good?
in
Y'all
war.
straight? I hope so. If not,
Although war
shit gonna
in
get
general
better.
isn't a pleasant place to
It's
be.
not gonna be dark forever again.
There are
we
some
gonna make
jobs
it
that are
through.
just plain worse
We gotta
than
grind
others.
it out. Trust
Being
in
the
God.
first up a ladder during a medieval siege, for instance,
gonna-
doesn't exactly
get
give
right.
you great odds of
Oh,
survival.
nah, you're done.
And absolutely
You're
no
done.
one really wants to be responsible for running messages along the trenches.
Oh, nah,
you
you're
may find
done.
yourself in the unlucky position of doing some of these jobs regardless. But there are other jobs that some people have mistakenly volunteered for.
I ain't
and
volunteering
then
for
discovered
shit.
exactly why that was a terrible,
I ain't
terrible
volunteering
idea.
for nothing.
Don't volunteer to test mustard
Hell
gas.
no.
Chemical
Yes.
warfare,
Why-
using weapons like
why
mustard
would you-
gas
why
first
would you
appeared
do
during
that?
World War I. A highly unpleasant substance, mustard gas was rarely lethal, but its victims suffered severe chemical burns and blisters, were often temporarily blinded, and experienced serious long-term health effects. Introduced by the Germans in 1917 at the Battle of Ypres, it soon earned the name King of the Battle Gases. Although it didn't cause the same volume of fatalities as other gases used,
He
exposure to it required
incapacitated him.
specialist medical care and caused severe damage to the respiratory system. Overall, the recovery time for its effects was much longer, and it lingered in the environment after being released, meaning large areas were contaminated, something soldiers didn't always realize until their skin began to blister.
Oh.
By the end of World War I, just a year later, mustard gas was still fairly new and its health impacts were not quite understood. It was only then that the long-term effects, such as respiratory issues and eye lesions, started to emerge.
What?
Quietly,
I don't
each
even
country
want to
began
look
to
that
examine
up.
the effects and impact
That
of mustard
sounds.
gas.
That sounds.
One way of doing this was by
terrible and
recruiting
horrible.
quote-unquote
I just
volunteer
could've combined
soldiers
them
for
two words.
experimentation
My
and
bad.
testing of mustard gas, as the Americans did in the 1940s. Despite this seeming
They
like a test,
tested it
as the
on 'em?
Americans did in soldiers for experimentation and
injected it in
testing,
them?
recruiting quote-unquote
Hold
volunteer
on.
soldiers for experimentation and testing of mustard gas, as the Americans did in the 1940s. Despite this seeming like a test no one would willingly volunteer for, there were approximately 60,000 participants in
Y'all
the
are
study. Many veterans have
crazy.
since spoken out about not being told what they were volunteering for
Oh,
or having
wow.
been lied to.
So y'all
Conducted by the
cap.
Chemical Warfare Service, they used a variety of different tests to measure the effects of mustard gas on the volunteers. As well as patch or drop tests, chamber tests, and field tests were used to examine the efficacy of newly developed protective clothing. These research projects predominantly focused on whether racial disparity had anything to do with the impact of mustard gas. As
What?
a result, these so-called volunteers were often minority soldiers.
Of course. It's always some bullshit. It's always some shit, bruh. Ain't that about a bitch, bruh? I'm not even surprised, to be honest.
And as such, they became the victims
I'm
of these
not
experiments,
surprised
with
at
many
all.
reporting effects such as cancer, eye injury, and PTSD in later life.
It's fucked
One
up,
such
bruh.
veteran, Rollins Edwards, reported it felt like his skin was on fire.
It'd be
Men
like
fainted
that.
around him and all were in bad shape. To make the matter even worse and volunteering seem even more fruitless, there was a distinct lack of follow-up of these studies. No one properly measured the long-term effects and impact of being exposed to mustard gas during these trials, despite evidence
What?
mounting over the decades. In the 1990s, the VA began efforts to reach veterans and offer them long overdue benefits for volunteering and their subsequent lifelong sacrifices. Don't volunteer for latrine duty.
Oh, you gotta clean
Even
them
in the
dirty
comfort
ass.
of your own
Why
home,
would you
no
do
one
that?
particularly enjoys cleaning a toilet.
Nobody
In
wants
war,
to do
this
that.
is amplified tenfold as the task becomes
Niggas be dirty as shit. They do not be caring, bro. They do not be. Especially out there, a lot, and you in the field, shit, it ain't no showers. You know, a lot of times you ain't getting no, if you really out there in the field like that, it's not no showers, bro. your diet is gonna be shit. So that shit gonna be it's gonna be stanky and dirty, nigga. It's
was
not
an
gonna
extremely
lie.
unpleasant
I'm not
one.
gonna lie.
Anecdotes of soldiers unwittingly volunteering for latrine duty during boot camp circulate the internet, with many lamenting falling for the "any volunteers" cry they received from their drill sergeants. Latrines during the war, as one can imagine, were even worse. There were no modern plumbing facilities on the front lines of battle, after all. Instead, if one was lucky, were long pits dug some way away from the trenches where soldiers could relieve themselves.
They taking some
The less
fat
lucky,
dudes.
such
I
as
ain't
those at
gonna lie.
Passchendaele, merely had to use emptied bully beef tins, throwing away their
what?
contents after use. Latrine trenches were looked
That
after
little
by
ass
personnel who
can.
were expected to keep them in good
Hell
condition,
no.
or as good condition as a hole in the ground could be kept in. Don't
I'm not
volunteer for
doing it.
night watch.
Oh nah. You go to
Unless you
you go to sleep. Everybody's done for, bro. You doze off one good time and that enemy creep up. Everybody's done for, bro.
You're a night owl, volunteering for night watch during war can be a dangerous business, as well as dealing with the potential attacks
That's
that
why
lead to
they got a partner now. But shit, a lot of the time the partner might fall asleep too. They be just as sleepy as you.
stay
Shit.
alert and survey the area. Tired soldiers also had to contend with one other big problem: falling asleep on the job. In some cases, the consequences of a soldier neglecting his duty like this could be disastrous. Someone
Everybody
could
did.
easily die, positions could be exposed, and the enemy could sneak past defenses.
Yeah.
That's why in 1806, the U.S. Congress made falling asleep on duty in wartime a capital offense, executing those who dozed at their post.
Dang,
In
execution.
1861, one such near victim was a soldier who was on guard near Camp Lyon, Washington, D.C. The case of William Scott, now nicknamed the Sleeping Sentinel, caught the nation's attention and the president's. Reportedly, Scott had volunteered for a second consecutive night of duty to relieve a fellow soldier who had fallen ill. After being found asleep at his post, he was immediately arrested and sentenced to death. Luckily, he received a pardon, going on to die some months later while saving fellow soldiers during the Battle of Lee's Mill in Virginia.
At least say
Even
pardon.
today,
Just
falling
2
asleep
straight
at your
nights,
post
bro.
remains an offense in many of the world's militaries.
I believe it.
Don't volunteer to be a canary girl.
The
During
ones
the
that made the
World Wars, the
bullets.
vast majority of the country's fit and able-bodied young men were quickly conscripted or volunteered to fight on the front lines, but they were not the only gender volunteering their lives to help the war effort. Despite not taking as large of an active part in the fighting,
what's her
the women
name?
of countries
In
like
the
the
poster.
UK still
Y'all know what
wanted
I'm
to do
talking
their
about, this
bit,
one.
and the men leaving for war
This one
had
right
left
here.
the perfect opportunity
Y'all know
open
exactly
for them
what
to
I'm
do
talking
so.
about.
Naturally, with half the population all fighting, many workplaces suddenly found themselves with a distinct lack of employees, particularly as at that time the vast majority of their workforce was male. As munitions factories sprung up in abundance, it was women who stepped into the places left behind by the men. One such job women volunteered for was at the Royal Ordnance filling factories, where they worked packing shells with TNT. The result of which were some
Oh,
curious
nah.
side effects,
You was-
including causing the women's skin and hair to turn a bright yellow, earning them the nickname Canary Girls. This wasn't just
Bright
a cosmetic
yellow.
effect either. Reportedly, babies born to canary girls during the war were also born yellow,
Oh,
although
nah.
the color thankfully faded away.
Oh, that's
Turning
good.
bright yellow wasn't
What
an
is that?
ideal
What-
situation for anyone,
what
but canary
caused
girls
it?
had other
Do
more
we know?
sinister health effects to worry about. Many suffered long-term, developing throat problems, bone issues, and in the worst cases, liver disease from the TNT chemicals. Although they were given milk to drink to combat the chemicals, the women still suffered from anemia
Milk.
and immune system damage
What
that
the
led
hell
to
that
over
gonna
400
do?
women dying from TNT
I
exposure
mean,
during
volunteer.
World War I.
My bad. I'm keep tugging over the video, y'all.
The women still suffered from anemia and immune system damage that led to over 400 women dying from TNT exposure during World War I. Don't volunteer as a medic at Passchendaele. The Battle of Passchendaele was a particularly awful
I never
campaign
heard
that
of this.
resulted in some of the heaviest casualties of World War I, Poor conditions and tactics resulted
Boy
in a
got
5-mile
popped.
advance at the cost of 250,000 soldiers' lives. And in the
Damn.
midst of
How much
Sector
land?
1, poor conditions and tactics resulted in a 5-mile advance at the cost of 250,000 soldiers' lives. And in the midst of it all were volunteer medics exposed to the harsh conditions of war.
Oh no, they was
In the UK
coughing up
military, for
shit.
example, Army nurses
All
worked
in their
alongside
faces.
VADS, voluntary aid detachment
You was probably
nurses,
getting
who
sick
worked at
of
casualty
hell.
clearing stations during the battle. These were only 6 to 8 miles from the front
Oh, they was cleaning the bodies up too? Oh nah, y'all was probably getting sick of hell, I ain't gonna lie.
lines, and as a result, nurses faced the trauma of seeing the damage of war firsthand, suffered disease from infected wounds, and experienced the dangers of being so close to battle, with some dying in blasts targeting these stations. The Red
That's evil. You was targeting that's I'm like 95% sure that's illegal today.
Cross estimated
I wanna
across
say
World War I,
98%,
128 nursing members, 11 general service members, and 6 Joint War Committee members were killed in the war, with at least 100 other VADs also suffering the same fate.
Hey, y'all ain't even had no outro for the video. It was still a W video. I was right with the video. Hey, like the video if you like it. Dislike it if you dislike it. Comment, subscribe, push, slap, smack, hit the noti bell, all that good shit on the way out. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. I'm out. Peace.